new drinks are now at McDonald's, with refreshers like the strawberry watermelon refresher and the mango pineapple refresher with popping boba, to crafted sodas like the Sprite Berry Blast with berry flavors and cold foam. Who knew ice cold drinks could be so fire? Try them all now at McDonald's.
Refreshers contain caffeine. Copyright 2026, The Coca-Cola Company. Sprite is a registered trademark of The Coca-Cola Company.
This summer, serve up the cookout classics, Kraft mayo and dressing. Toss green salads with delicious ranch dressing or zesty Italian. Serve smooth, craveably creamy potato salads with mayo. We all know it's not a cookout without Kraft.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where I discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have slipped under the radar and passed most people by. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and today I'm going to be discussing the 2021 film Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, starring Kristen Wiig, Annie Mumolo, and Jamie Dornan. But joining me to discuss it, I have a new guest. She is from the Writer's Cut podcast, and that is Andrea Birding. How's it going, Andrea?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, excited to have you. I'm a big fan of, screenwriting podcasts. So, as soon as, I saw that I had the option to get you on here, I was happy to take it. What can you tell the people about the Writer's Cut?
Yeah, so the Writer's Cut, hosted by myself and my fellow screenwriter friend Trevor. We're both Chicago-based screenwriters, and we are watching and discussing every film that has won a screenwriting award from the Writers Guild of America, beginning with the first Writers Guild Awards in 1949 and moving forward from there chronologically. We are now in, I believe, 1974, so we've been at this for about a year and a half. We've made it through quite a big chunk, but we still got a lot left to go. But it's been really fun. It's Trevor, my co-host, he's the one who had the idea for the podcast, and he approached me because he had heard me say in the past that I wanted to watch more movies. And as someone who writes movies, I sure do watch a lot of TV and not a lot of movies. And yeah, I wanted to expose myself more to film, and it's really been an awesome way for me to see movies that would have otherwise not been on my radar at all. And it forces me to watch a movie a week at least. It's been really cool.
Yeah, that's always the thing I've discovered, being a cinephile, being, a writer, is there's so many classic movies that you just haven't gotten around to watching, and it's like, well, I need to watch this at some point. So it's good to have a reason to go back to some of those classics. I was listening to some of your episodes. Yeah, listen to you talk about Billy Wilder and stuff. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, so it's a great podcast. Everybody out there should definitely check it out. But yeah, we are talking about today, like I said, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, which did not win any screenwriting awards, unfortunately.
It did not. It did not win the WJ award. We will not be talking about it on the podcast, unfortunately.
Yeah. But this one, it comes out in 2021. So obviously, we all know what was happening in the world at that time. So this movie was initially supposed to come out in 2020 with a theatrical release. It got pushed back, and then eventually they just kind of were like, you know what, screw this, we're releasing this on VOD, which is why we're covering it here, because it did get relatively good reviews, but it was kind of one of those movies that was lost in that year without movie theaters, where things just kind of got unceremoniously dumped in on streaming, and maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, but I was a big fan of it. Brought back together a couple people who had worked together on Bridesmaids, and when I sent you my list of movies to cover, you had mentioned this was one you hadn't seen before, but one that you were interested in. So I wanted to get what your first impressions on the movie. What did you think of it?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. So this is so up my alley in so many ways. So in my writing, I really focus a lot on writing roles and characters for women like 40 plus, like women over 40. And This was just like, wow, amazing off the bat. Just like the premise of just like these two amazing, like 40-year-old Midwestern women going on an adventure. I was like, hell yeah, I'm sold. Uh, um, and yeah, it was just so silly, which I feel like there's not enough out there anymore that's just like so deeply silly and absurd. And yeah, so many people, so many of my friends had said to me offhand, like, oh my God, I saw Barb and Sarah go to Vista Del Mar, and I really think you should watch it. And I say so many, it was probably like three people, but still like like a couple more
Mm.
than one person was like, I really think that you would enjoy this movie. And I just, like I said, I don't have a ton of time for movie watching, and now most of my movie watching time is spent on my podcast, and so like it was really cool to have like an excuse to watch this movie that I've been wanting to watch for so long. And it was, I really had a great time watching it. I thought it was so much fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And silly and fun is really the best way to describe this movie. And I also love that you highlighted it's about a demographic we don't see that often leading a movie. It's a two-hander with two women in their 40s, and it's just kind of these two women from a smaller town. They're just kind of these nice folksy women that have the big hair and everything, and they're nice, but they get caught up on this adventure. It almost feels like these were characters from like an SNL sketch, and they were like, well, we gotta like make a movie out of them. And like that first segment where they're like sitting on the couch gabbing, feels like that would have been the SNL sketch. And it's like the Wayne's World thing. It's like, well, we need to have something for them to do. We have to have them go to Vista Del Mar. But of course, these are completely original characters, conceived by Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo. But they feel like they have this history. That's why I feel like that you could have seen, them being recurring characters on a sketch show, because they feel very realized, like they have all this history and intimate knowledge of each other. And I just thought it was hilarious. This is just one of the dumbest smart movies you'll ever see, where it is just constant riffs and jokes and bits. Like, there's so much little dumb subtle stuff happening. I could just, comedies are a little bit harder to talk about, I feel like, on reviews and podcasts, because it's just like, oh yeah, that was really funny, like it was just like, but there's so much of that where like when he does the date, the quote unquote walk with the two women after they have their first, threesome encounter, and it's just the same background happening with a kid with the cotton candy and the old couple. There's just so much stuff like that, or they'll like mention something that happened and not even show like, oh yeah, that guy who was trying to kill us, he was a real murderer. Anyway, moving on, and just constant callbacks and just big, ridiculous, over-the-top stuff, calling out other, like, movie trends and stuff like that. But just, so if you are a fan of movies, if you've seen a lot of movies, this really plays up on a lot of those. So I think the performances from both the leads are just so incredible. They're just very empathetic and funny, but they also are real flawed people. And then just go along with these ridiculous bits. And also wanted to definitely shout out Damon Wayans, who I'm a big fan of from New Girl, him just being this absurd character. And the surprise for me in this movie was Jamie Dornan. People know him from 50 Shades and stuff, I guess. He's kind of seen as just like this actor who's got good looks, and maybe that's about all he was known for. But he is so hilarious in this. They're all just doing this ridiculous deadpan, saying these things are absolutely absurd with a straight face. And when he belts out into that song, I was just dying. What did you think of the performances and the comedy in this?
Oh man, well, I think you made a good point. So in my writing, I primarily write dramedies, so sort of that like hitting that line between comedy and drama.
Mm.
And I think this is a perfect example of why I struggle to write what I would call like straight comedy, is because of the jokes per minute. And I think this is so successful at just like bam, 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 constant nonstop, whether they're like a big joke or a little thing in the background, or just like it's nonstop. And that's so hard to do and to do well. And I find really intimidating as a writer. So like it was really awesome to see that done just so well. And you're absolutely right about Jamie Dornan. Is that I think that's his
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
I'm so bad with actor names. I'm like Edgar. It was Edgar. But, I like had to stop and look him up in because I was like, is that the guy from 50 Shades of Grey? And it was. And I just was so impressed with his comedic timing. I was so impressed with I just how silly he felt he could be, like I think there's something so amazing about seeing a very conventionally attractive actor just letting loose and just being their silliest selves singing. Like I thought of Ryan Gosling in the Barbie movie.
Mm.
Honestly, I would say like comparable performances of just like handsome man being his goofiest self and coming out with an awesome product for it. Like I really appreciated his performance. I thought he was wonderful.
Yeah, he's so good, and I love that you brought up the parallel to Gosling because I was kind of thinking that too. Because I feel like there's not a ton of big, leading, very handsome guys who will just make an absolute fool of themselves. And both Gosling and
Hmm.
Barbie, I mean, in a lot of his stuff, and then Jamie Dornan here, who, like I said, he was known for being like kind of just a sex symbol. Like that was really what he was known for, and for him to just give this performance that is just so making fun of himself, kind of playing this like very lovable loser, but with a
Hmm.
real heart of gold. I think was hilarious. Also, very good singer. Was kind of surprised at that, but yeah, I thought he was good. I love that scene that leads into their like menage a trois where they're at the bar and he's kind of just sad and they're kind of like doing their chipper thing and then they drink the thing and then the Titanic remix starts happening. I thought that was it was just so good, and like you said, there's every second of this movie there's some kind of joke going on. It is jam packed with comedy, and a lot of that is like really funny writing and funny things that they're saying. But as I was alluding to earlier, like a lot of it is just things that are playing out in the background, things that you think are just there to be filler, like, oh, they're just like on the plane and these ladies love to yap, so they're yapping about, they make up this whole story about Trish, and then Trish comes back and it's Reba McEntire, and like it's just stuff like that. Because I remember not the first time I watched it, but last time I watched this, I was introducing it to a person who's now my girlfriend, and I was like, we've got to watch this movie. And it was like me and her roommate, and we were just like sitting around having some drinks and kind of talking. But it was like, we are missing so much right now in the movie because there are so many good jokes. If you miss the thing about her saying she's thinking about frog legs and Kermit the Frog, then Kermit the Frog in the montage, it's still gonna be funny, but it's not gonna hit the same way. So I think this is
Exactly.
I'm glad I'm having you on because I think this is, a lot of people think of screenplays, they think of dialogue primarily, but it's so much more than that.
Mhm.
And I think this does a really good job of showing really good dialogue, but also showing the other stuff that goes into a screenplay, the things that play out in the background, set up and payoff. What, from a screenwriter's perspective, what did you think of this movie?
Well, I think exactly what you just said, the setup and the payoff is so important. I felt so invested from the very first scene because I feel there is a version of this movie that perhaps exists in an alternate universe that begins with Barb and Star at their job and starts with the introduction to just them, and that's fine, and it's a fine choice. But I think the stronger choice is the way they begin, which is with this supervillain in a
Mm.
secret lair underneath a tree in the middle of nowhere, and like you're you go in thinking you're going to get a certain kind of movie, and like it's setting the tone for something that's coming later, and it's starting the movie with a sense of like, well, what does that have to do with what I'm here to watch? And it leaves you kind of curious, and it's more interesting and it's smarter than throwing it in as a surprise, because it still is kind of a surprise, but it's leading your audience into thinking like, what does this have to do with anything? Oh my god, now I'm so curious. Because I have had experience like writing, a sci-fi script, a horror script, things like that. And notes I've gotten are like, you need in your first scene to have the genre markers. You need your audience to know, like, hey, I know why we're here. We're gonna get there. and
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I don't know. Just like the way they chose to introduce the story, I felt was so smart because, like I said, you could have started with Barb and Star because that's what the majority of the movie is, but you have this really bizarre, strange, unexpected supervillain undertone, and so to lead with that, I think was really wise.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I love that you brought up the comparisons to like genre film because it got me thinking like, oh yeah, it's kind of it is really smart to start off with something a little bit implying that there's something bigger, something like is going to happen here, that there is a wider world than their little town, and I think they live in Nebraska, and it's like, okay, there's something here. There is like this. What we would, if it was a genre thing, would be like a secondary world, right? It would, and that's why I think it's like, you think of like something like Harry Potter. Harry Potter doesn't start with like the first chunk of that movie is Harry living with the Dursleys. It's a very boring, normal life. But the first little bit of that movie is like, no, there's something magic happening here in the world. And this does the same thing where it's like, okay, there is something happening in the world, and it's not magic, but there's something beyond the normal kind of like, suburban Nebraska that they live in, this small town that they kind of poke fun at. It's like, no, there's this bigger thing. There's going to be this Vista Del Mar. There's going to be this whole subplot about like mosquitoes that can kill you going on, and big, just contraptions that as soon as that bird, that robot owl turns its head, you're like, okay, this is the movie we're in for. It's going to be very silly, but it's going to have like these bigger elements to it. And so they have that introduction to Barb and Star in the world, and they kind of like Joseph Campbell-esque cross the threshold into this secondary world that is Del Mar. It's like this really magical place to the point where when they get there, there's this whole musical number, and the people are singing and dancing, and they subvert that for a little bit, but then they kind of go right back to it, and it's just a lot of fun. It is a really cool setting, Del Mar. I really liked it, and it lets you just do these absurd off-the-wall things, like have a crab named Morgan Freeman with a D that is like riffing on Morgan Freeman's best roles, and then it'll every once in a while just cut back to their normal boring talking club, and then it'll just go back to wait, we're back here having fun in Del Mar. So yeah, I think, like you said, that's really a really good way to set the movie's expectations up so you know what you're getting into. You are getting the vibe of what this is going to be, rather than just being like in this kind of like different setting that doesn't really feel appropriate for the movie that's coming.
LinkedIn is pretty great at a lot of things, like helping you tap into the latest trends and insights in your field. We cannot stop your coworker from tapping her pencil. LinkedIn can help you find new jobs that align with your career goals. We cannot help you find the source of that weird smell in the office fridge. Ew. And while we can't stop your coworkers from bringing their hobbies into the office, LinkedIn can help you bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
Zootopia 2 has come home to Disney+.
Let's go!
Get ready for a new case.
We're gonna crack this case and prove we're the greatest partners of all time!
New friends.
You are... Gary the Snake. And your last name? The Snake.
Dream Team. Hit new habitats.
Zootopia has a secret reptile population.
You can watch the record-breaking phenomenon at home.
You're clearly working it.
Zootopia 2, now available on Disney+, rated PG.
Absolutely. And I think, you mentioned Vista Del Mar just as a location. I think the production design on this is so stellar and just so cartoonish and over the top. And I think the visual of it is why we can allow ourselves to exist in this like over the top world, because it just visually looks so over the top and cartoony that it's almost like real life Looney Tunes, kind of, like maybe not Looney Tunes specifically, but like it feels like cartoony, and the visuals of the world allow you to accept the stylized nature of the dialogue and the interactions and the plot.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that there's kind of this intentional artifice to a lot of it, where it's like there's stuff that like looks kind of cheap on purpose, like in Edgar's song when it cuts to the seagull, and it's just this kind of like very cheap looking seagull, and they could have obviously made something better than that. That wasn't a production issue, but it's plays very funny. It works very well. It's like, yeah, this is the movie. This is a movie where like we're doing something like ridiculous here. It fits with the vibes, but it also fits with the setting of Vista Del Mar, of it being this very cultivated, very artificial, but not in a bad way place. I'm somebody who goes on a good amount of cruises, and even though this is not a cruise, it's the same kind of vibes of like, we're all here in this very crafted setting by the pool. There's the drinks, there's the buffet, there's all the excursions and activities you're gonna do, you're meeting somebody, all that stuff. It really captures, I feel like, that specific kind of very artificial vacation. It's almost like Disneyland also, in a sense, which I also, because I live right down the street from it, I also spent a lot of time at Disneyland. So I liked it. I liked that whole aesthetic. How did you feel about that and the way the movie looked and everything?
Oh, I thought it was stunning. I thought it was so beautiful. I think you said the word artifice. I think is very accurate. And I will say I do not consider myself a Disney adult. I do come from a family of Disney adults, so I'm very familiar. Said with love in my heart, but yeah, it felt very Disney vacation in complimentary, like said in a complimentary way. Yeah, I thought visually it was just stunning and interesting, and nothing ever felt like repetitive, or it never became boring in the world of the movie. Yeah, I thought the visuals were gorgeous.
Yeah, and we've talked about the themes, we've talked about the setting, we talked about the comedy, but we haven't really talked about and the characters. We haven't talked about the themes as much. We hinted at a little bit, talking about this friendship between these two women in their 40s, and like I said, that's not something you get to see a lot. One of the few other examples I could say is something, women in their late 30s, which was Bridesmaids, which was obviously made by two of the same people. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about what you thought about the way that these two women are portrayed, how also Edgar fits into that. This kind of, like I said, unique dynamic that, this movie, I'll put it this way, this movie definitely passes the Bechdel test.
Yes, absolutely it does. Yeah, and I so appreciate that. Like I said, most of the movies that I write, I aim to give juicy, interesting characters to women over 40, because we don't see, like, where do they go? Like, they're here in the world, why aren't they in movies? And as someone who's approaching 40 and is a woman, it's I want to see that reflected. And I don't know, I loved that Edgar's interest in Star. I was very dismissive of it in her own sense, because she says to herself, like, she says something along the lines of like, men find me disgusting and I'm fine with that. And that's so sad, and like such a little like personal mental health blip that she's clearly dealing with. But the fact that Edgar's interest in Star is so minimally played for laughs, and is never like, ha ha ha, look at him with this gross old lady, like
Yeah.
it is to an extent played for laughs, because she's not like, oh, supermodel, airbrushed, perfect, gorgeous, but like, I mean, Kristen Wiig is a very beautiful woman, but like, it's not like, that's not the comedy. The joke is not, look at him with this weird older Midwestern woman. And that's, I just appreciated that so much, that their dynamic was like genuine. And for such a silly movie to have like a genuine romance in there was just very sweet.
Yeah, I loved that. And so their whole relationship, as well as the relationship between Barb and Star themselves, and then Barb and Edgar, I thought was all really fascinating and fun. And I love that in a worse version of this movie, like, obviously they have there is a strife between them, and it does come from Edgar, but it's never like, oh, like, we're competing for this man. There is like a little bit of that, but that's not what causes the strife. The strife is that Star is lying about it, and she is like concocted. She's like, oh, I'm sick, and then they both kind of like lie to each other. So it's really not about him. It's not like, oh, well, I wanted to be with him and you stole him from me. That never comes into the movie. It just comes from, hey, like, I wish you would have been honest with me. Why aren't you telling me this thing? And when they have that moment of reconciliation at the end, I think it's really beautiful. I love also Edgar's journey that he goes on, where he feels like he needs the love and affection. Like, it's in a like less toxic way, kind of playing on like the male loneliness thing, where he just wants to be just in a real relationship. He's like, he keeps being like, we could only be official. There's so many official couples, And it's not even like this thing where he's like lusting after her. He's just like, I want to be acknowledged as being like the person that you are in love with, because I am clearly in love with you, Sharon, the other Kristen Wiig character, the villain. So I guess he has a type in this movie, but he the path that he goes on of feeling like he's with someone who sees him as worthy, so he starts to see himself as worthy, and then that also happens with Kristen Wiig. I think it's a beautiful thing, these two people seeing the best in each other and bringing out the best in each other. And even in the end, I love that the villain gets a bit of redemption, because she's doing all this because she has been ridiculed and harassed her whole life. Her only friend got eaten by an alligator. It's this very like funny but tragic story. And at the end, after she's like wanted to kill everybody, they're like, you know what? No, we'll be your friends. You never had any friends, so we'll be there for you. And even Edgar's like, yeah, it's weird, but I'll be your friend. I really thought that was a good ending. This movie about female friendship, I thought it really did a good job with all of that stuff.
Absolutely. And I think you make a great point that really, I think just about everybody has an arc of some kind of like story character arc, that they start in one place and end somewhere else. And even the small, like I'm thinking like even Morgan Freeman with a D, the crab, is like, I've lived a full life and I'm going into the ocean. Like he's got his own little like mini arc, is like 10-second arc. And I think that's a sign of just such strong writing, that every character has like a beginning, middle, and an end, no matter how brief it is, no matter how surface level it is. Everybody has come to the end of the story different than where they began it.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the ways they get there, I think, are just so smart and funny. I love that while Barb is on her kind of just her walkabout or whatever, and she's like discovering the soul, she just comes across Tommy Bahama. Like, that is just such a, because he gets, what's one of those things again, like he gets shouted out like earlier on, like somebody mentions Tommy Bahama, and then he comes back as like Andy Garcia, who, by the way, I guess he was credited as like Tommy Bahama as himself in the credits, but Andy Garcia is just so freaking hilarious in this. Like, I'm always a big fan of his, and just seeing him play just like this ridiculous caricature of this like real guy who's made himself into a caricature was really fun. I think Garcia is also somebody who is just always kind of understands the project, so there's a lot of like really funny like small beats and cameos in this. Did you have any other funny like little moments that you wanted to shout out like that?
Oh man, I just the little pieces of repetition seem so minimal but become important. I think specifically of their friendship bracelets that they get, that are so sharp and pointy, that they it's just a little random thing that they're like, ouch, oof, oh no, this hurts. But then they're able to use it to like get out when Edgar like ties them up because he thinks they're spies. That they're able to like use that to get out of the. It's just so silly, and it's just something that seems like such a random one-off. Oh, also, I really got to shout out the guy at the dinner or the bar or wherever, the piano player who was always singing songs about boobs. I was like, yes,
so good.
Yes.
And then they come back to him, he's like, oh, my friends in high school have all died. It's just like, this is a little bit of a different one.
He had a bad day that day,
Yeah, no, it's really fun. Like, there's so we could just like go on and on, I think, about like all of the funny like beats in this movie, because there's so many. And I love that there's a lot of stuff where, like you said, the shells, which are really sharp, get brought up later. And because honestly, there's a lot of stuff in this that they're Chekhov guns, and you don't even realize that they are at the time that they get introduced. You think it's, and I would think that that's a sign of strong screenwriting, is because whenever it's, the Chekhov's gun thing, it's like whenever you see a thing, it's like, okay, well, this is going to be important later. You're just waiting for the gun to go off, right? In this, it introduces it, and you don't even realize that it's going to be important, that it's so, well introduced and naturally put into the screenplay that doesn't catch you off guard like a lot of stuff like that does, but it also doesn't feel like it's a Deus Ex Machina out of nowhere. That's a really difficult line to walk, and this movie does it like 10 or 15 times, I feel like.
Absolutely. It's the subtlety of it, while, because this is not a subtle movie. I would not call this movie a subtle
No.
movie in any sense, but like the subtlety of planting those pieces, like setting up the dominoes so that they can all fall so perfectly. It's almost like a magic trick, like look over here while we're doing this, and secretly we're setting up this other thing for, again, so the proverbial dominoes can all fall exactly how they're supposed to, and it's very satisfying.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I mean, any last thoughts on the movie here? Because I mean, there's a lot going on, and is there anything we haven't hit on yet?
Oh man, just all the little bits, and I just love to see anything about female friendship at its core, and just like this is about two women who love each other more than anything in the world, and it's silly and it's goofy, and like there's sexy moments and there's funny moments, but like ultimately this is about two best friends who love each other, and I think that's very nice, and we don't have a ton of media that's like that, and I just appreciate it so much.
Yeah, absolutely, really agree. And then I guess, with that, my last question for you is just, are there any other movies about female friendship that, you wanted to mention? Do you have any other favorites?
I'm gonna be cheap and say the movie that has not been made yet, which is my movie that I've written called Breast and Show,
Oh, very
which
nice,
is
very nice.
a dramedy feature loosely inspired by my own experience as a young breast cancer survivor
Oh,
and
very cool.
former burlesque dancer. And so so nobody's made it yet, but if anybody wants to make it, that would be my insert recommendation here. This movie that I've written. Now that I've killed now that I've killed enough time. I mean, I know it was a play first, but I think of Wicked, just about like these two. This is just like epic story about these two women who just love each other, and like don't at first, obviously. So it's a little bit of a different story arc, but yeah, I think Wicked. I think Steel Magnolias is a great, if you feel like crying, is a great one about just like female friendships. So yeah, there's a lot of great art out there about it, but there can always be more.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of ones I love too about, like, male friendships. Like Superbad was a very, impactful movie for
Mhm.
me. I think the kind of the female slash Gen Z version of that is Booksmart. Even having Jonah Hill's sister is one of the parts. But another one I want to shout out that's just kind of about women in a, I think they're in their 30s, but it's the same, somewhat similar vibes. Is have you ever seen Romy and Michelle's high school reunion?
Yes. Oh my God, I haven't seen that in forever. I want to watch that now.
Yeah. So yeah, highly recommend that to anybody out there listening. But yeah, there's a lot of, there's some good ones. Not enough, but there are definitely some good ones out there, and I think this one has really earned its place in the upper echelon of them. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for coming on, Andrea, and talking about this. Where can people find you and find your podcast and more of your stuff?
Yeah, so if you're interested in the writer's cut, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you get your podcasts. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Writer's Cut Pod. Unfortunately, I never quite got the hang of TikTok. So we are not on we are technically on TikTok, but I haven't posted in like a year. If you happen to be a Chicago-based screenwriter listening to this podcast, I do organize a monthly screenwriter meetup at the Long Room in Ravenswood, and our next is set for May 18th. I'm not sure when this episode is coming out, but yeah, otherwise, if you're just interested in little me, I am on Instagram and Twitter at Andrea Birding, where I post mostly pictures of my dog.
Very nice. Yeah, that's cool stuff. So yeah, definitely go check it. Like I said, that's a really fun podcast. And you said I think this actually is coming out on the 18th. So if you guys are May 18th, so if you guys are listening, go and you're in Chicago, go check it out. You know, if you're listening to this in the morning. But yeah, this, like I said, this is a lot of fun. If anybody out there would like to check out some more of my stuff, you can head to underratedmoviepodcast.com. It's got links to everything that I do, including a few other podcasts, Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones, where I talk about the latest MCU releases, both movies and TV shows. I also do another podcast that I co-host called Midnight Film Society. It's just kind of more about recently released movies and stuff. Some of my panels that I've had at Comic-Con, WonderCon, are also available through there, as is my Patreon. You can also go to patreon.com/underratedmoviepodcast. There are episodes a week early and ad-free. There's a whole bonus podcast, including right now, we're in the middle of the season of Amadeus, where I'm looking at Amadeus in 15-minute chunks. You know, all back episodes of other bonus podcasts that I've done over the years. So I'd love you guys to check that out, or go to Underrated Movie Podcast on all of the social media, except for not on Twitter anymore, because of course. But Blue Sky, Instagram, you know, all that stuff. Yeah, but love to see you guys there. And yeah, I will see you guys all